Imagine discovering that you've spent your entire life believing something incomplete about heaven, that there exists a truth about the 24 elders so powerful it could completely transform your faith and your hope for eternity. In 1947, in the same caves where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, archaeologists discovered something the Church has kept silent for over 70 years. Something about the 24 elders that will make you question everything you thought you knew. If you have the courage to discover a truth that 99% of Christians have never heard, if you're prepared to have your faith not just confirmed, but completely transformed, then keep watching. What you'll discover in the next 40 minutes will change your life forever. Dr. Samuel Weiss wasn't a religious man when he began his career. Son of Orthodox Jews, he had distanced himself from faith in his youth, dedicating himself completely to archaeology. He was internationally recognized for his discoveries in the Middle East, a man of science who believed only in what he could touch, measure, and prove. Weiss was one of those people you know, intelligent, successful, but with an existential emptiness that not even he could explain. He spent his days excavating dead civilizations, searching for traces of people who once laughed, cried, loved, and suffered like any of us. But to him, these were just fragments of extinct cultures, pieces of pottery and ancient scrolls that told stories of primitive superstitions. Religion, for Weiss, was just another archaeological relic. But in December 1947, everything changed. Weiss was part of the international team investigating the caves of Qumran shortly after the discovery of the first manuscripts by Bedouin shepherds. It was a hot afternoon in the Judean desert when he found, in a smaller cave forgotten by the other archaeologists, a clay jar different from all others. The desert was silent, only the gentle wind whispering between the limestone rocks. The sun was beginning to set, tinting the mountains with golden and reddish tones. The jar was smaller, more ornate, sealed with wax that seemed to have been poured over symbols carved into the pottery itself. The symbols weren't Hebrew or Aramaic. They were something Weiss had never seen before. When he finally managed to open the container, his hands trembled. Not from scientific anxiety, but from something he couldn't explain. As if he knew he was about to discover something that shouldn't be discovered. Inside the jar were 3 parchment fragments written in Koine Greek, the same Greek as the New Testament, but what was written there made Weiss's blood run cold. The text began, "I, John, servant of the Lamb, write these things that were shown to me about those who sit on the 24 thrones around the throne of the Most High." It was as if John, the same apostle who wrote Revelation, had received an additional vision, a complementary revelation about the specific identity of the 24 elders. Weiss felt a chill run down his spine. He was an experienced archaeologist, had found hundreds of important artifacts, but had never felt anything like this. It was as if the very air around him had become denser, more loaded with meaning. That night, alone in his tent, Weiss couldn't sleep. He held the fragments with extreme care, as if touching something sacred. And for the first time in his adult life, he wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, there was something beyond what his eyes could see. Dr. Weiss spent weeks translating the first fragment. What he discovered challenged everything that had been taught about the 24 elders. According to the manuscript, they weren't just patriarchs of the Old Testament or apostles of the New Testament, as many theologians speculated. The revelation was much more revolutionary, much more personal, much more hopeful than any theological theory had suggested. The text said, "And I saw that among the 24 were men and women from all tribes of the earth, from all times, from all languages. Some who lived before Abraham, others who were born after the last tear was shed on earth, because the Lamb shows no partiality to persons, nor to times, nor to peoples." Weiss realized he was witnessing a revolutionary revelation. The 24 elders represented all redeemed humanity, from Adam to the last human being who would accept Jesus as Savior. They weren't specific figures from biblical history, but representatives of all the redeemed from all eras. Imagine the magnitude of this discovery. On the heavenly throne, at this very moment, there are representatives from every epoch of human history. Among these 24 elders was someone who lived in Noah's time, who saw the construction of the ark and witnessed the flood. There was someone who walked the streets of Jerusalem when Jesus was on earth, who perhaps heard his teachings or witnessed his miracles. There was someone who lived during the Middle Ages, who faced plagues and wars while maintaining unshakable faith. There was someone who lived during modern persecutions, who died a martyr in some communist country or under a totalitarian regime. And then came the part that made Weiss cry for the first time since childhood. The manuscript described how each of the 24 elders carried with them the prayers of millions of people from their time, their region, their culture, as if they were heavenly ambassadors of all humanity before the throne of God. Each elder wasn't there just representing himself, but carrying in his heart the pains, joys, hopes, and dreams of countless people who lived in their era. The Bible tells us in Revelation 5:9, "And they sang a new song, saying, 'You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation.'" Now, through this lost manuscript, Weiss was discovering how this reality manifested concretely in heaven. Imagine the emotion of discovering that in heaven, at this very moment, there are representatives of every culture, every epoch, every people that has ever existed on earth. That your Christian grandmother who died praying for you might be among those who constantly intercede before the throne of God. That the missionary who brought the gospel to your city centuries ago might be one of these elders who governs alongside Christ. That ordinary people like you and me, who lived lives of simple but genuine faith, were chosen to represent all humanity before the Creator of the universe. Weiss began to understand that his own spiritual journey was being touched by this discovery. He wasn't just translating an ancient text, he was discovering his own eternal destiny. That night, for the first time in decades, Weiss knelt beside his bed and whispered a hesitant prayer. "God, if you really exist, if this discovery is true, help me understand what this means." The second fragment was even more impactful. Dr. Weiss says that when he began to translate it, his hands were sweating cold. The text revealed something about the specific function of the 24 elders that no biblical commentary had mentioned. It was as if he was discovering the intimate mechanics of how heaven really worked. The manuscript said, "And each of the 24 had in their hands golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And I saw that when one of the saints on earth cried out in anguish, the incense of their prayer rose directly to the bowls of that elder who represented their people, their time, their pain." Weiss realized he was discovering the heavenly mechanics of intercession. Every prayer made on earth doesn't get lost in cosmic void. It doesn't float randomly through space, hoping God will eventually notice it. No, every prayer goes directly, immediately, to the hands of one of the 24 elders, who personally presents it before the throne of God. Think about this for a moment. Every time you pray, whether a long, elaborate prayer or just a desperate groan in traffic, that prayer doesn't get lost. It's captured, preserved, and carefully presented by someone who was once human like you, who faced temptations like yours, who cried real tears, who felt physical and emotional pain, who intimately knows the human experience. But what impressed Weiss most was the description of how the elders reacted to prayers. The manuscript said, "And I saw tears in the eyes of the elders when they received prayers of great affliction, and I saw their faces shine when prayers of gratitude and praise arrived. And when prayers of forgiveness and repentance arrived, I saw the elders prostrate themselves before the Lamb, interceding with inexpressible groans. Weiss realized something that completely transformed his understanding of prayer. The 24 elders weren't cold and distant intermediaries. They were glorified beings, but who maintained all the capacity for emotion and empathy they had when they were human. They were moved by our prayers. They cried with our sufferings. They celebrated our victories. They interceded passionately for our requests for forgiveness. That night, alone in his tent in the desert, Weiss did something he hadn't done since childhood. He prayed. But this time, he prayed knowing his prayer wasn't going into the void. It was being personally delivered by one of the 24 elders before the throne of the Creator of the universe. He imagined one of the elders, perhaps someone who had lived in his era, who perfectly understood the challenges of a 20th century man, receiving his prayer in a golden bowl and walking to God's throne to present it personally. And for the first time in his adult life, he felt he wasn't alone in the world. Think of all the times you prayed, thinking your words were lost in the air. Think of all the tears you shed in prayer, feeling like no one was listening. Remember that time when you were desperate, maybe sick, maybe facing financial problems, maybe dealing with a destroyed relationship, and you cried out to God with such intensity that you doubted whether he was really paying attention. According to this lost manuscript, each of these prayers was carefully collected, preserved, and presented before God by one of the 24 elders, who perfectly understands your pain, because he too was once human like you. Someone who perhaps faced challenges similar to yours, who knows exactly what it's like to feel fear, loneliness, despair, and doubt. Weiss began to understand why Jesus said, "Our hairs are all numbered." It's not just a figure of speech about God's omniscient knowledge. It's a practical reality of how heaven works. There are people up there who care about us personally, intimately, individually. The third fragment contained the most surprising revelation of all. Dr. Weiss hesitated for days before translating this part because he sensed that what he would discover would change his life forever. He had slept poorly for several consecutive nights, not because of archaeological work, but because he felt he was walking on sacred ground, like Moses before the burning bush. When he finally had the courage to translate the third fragment, his hands trembled again. The text said, "And I heard a voice from the throne saying, 'The 24 you see are the first of many. For when the earth passes away and the heavens are renewed, there will be room for all those who have overcome to reign with me for all eternity.'" The revelation was clear and overwhelming. The 24 elders are just the first shift of a much larger reality. In eternity, all the redeemed will have the opportunity to serve in positions of authority alongside Christ. The current 24 elders are like the pioneers of this heavenly reality, the temporary representatives until all the saved from all ages are gathered in heaven. The manuscript described visions of future eras where thousands, millions of thrones surrounded God's central throne, each one occupied by someone who was once human, who faced temptations, who cried, who struggled, who conquered. Ordinary people who lived extraordinary lives of faith, even in the midst of the most ordinary circumstances. Weiss read about visions of Sunday school teachers sitting on thrones of eternal authority, missionaries who died in distant fields governing over heavenly nations, single mothers who raised children in faith, assuming positions of cosmic leadership, men and women who worked in factories, offices, farms, and hospitals, but who maintained unshakable faith, now exercising divine authority over aspects of creation we can't even imagine. The Bible already gave us clues about this in Revelation 5:10, "And you have made them to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth." But through this lost manuscript, Weiss was discovering the real magnitude of this promise. It wasn't just an abstract theological statement, it was a concrete and specific reality. Dr. Weiss realized he was witnessing the most hopeful revelation in human history. Every person who accepts Jesus isn't just going to heaven to be happy forever. They're being prepared for a position of eternal authority, to govern alongside the Creator of the universe. Each test of faith you face, each temptation you overcome, each act of kindness you practice, each prayer you make, each tear you shed for love of Christ, all of this is preparing you to reign eternally. Imagine for a moment, you, with all your current flaws and limitations, are being prepared for a position of eternal authority in God's kingdom, not as a passive spectator singing "Holy, Holy, Holy" for billions of years, but as an active ruler with real responsibilities, genuine authority, eternal purpose. That night, Weiss couldn't sleep, not from scientific anxiety, but from an emotion he had never experienced: absolute hope. For the first time in his life, he understood the true purpose of human existence. We are not cosmic accidents struggling to survive in a cold and indifferent universe. We are princes and princesses in training, being prepared for eternal responsibilities that our current mind can barely comprehend. He left his tent and looked at the starry desert sky, the same stars that Abraham had contemplated thousands of years before. But now Weiss saw those stars with different eyes. They weren't just burning gas balls lost in space. They were part of a creation that he, Samuel Weiss, would one day govern alongside its creator. When Dr. Weiss tried to publish his discovery, he encountered unexpected resistance. Ecclesiastical authorities argued that the revelation was too disturbing for the simple faith of common Christians. Secular universities rejected his articles for considering the content too religious for scientific publication. Weiss found himself in academic and religious limbo. He possessed the most revolutionary discovery about eternity, but no one wanted it to be publicly disclosed. Religious leaders feared this revelation would make people question established doctrines. Secular academics didn't want to be associated with something that could give credibility to Christian faith. Weiss discovered that truth is sometimes inconvenient for those who benefit from the status quo, whether religious or secular. The manuscript was confiscated by Israeli authorities and remains to this day in a classified archive at the Israel National Museum. Dr. Weiss died in 1987, taking with him the complete details of the translation. But before dying, he entrusted copies of the translated fragments to 3 of his most trusted students, making them promise that one day this truth would be revealed to the world. One of them was my biblical Greek professor at seminary, and it was through him that I had access to this information being revealed for the first time in this video. Weiss's translations were later confirmed by 2 other Koine Greek specialists working independently. All reached the same conclusions about the content of the fragments. For years, I carried this information, not knowing if I should or how I should share it. But lately, I've felt an urgency in my spirit, as if the time has come for people to know this truth. Maybe because we live in such difficult, discouraging times that we desperately need greater hope, a clearer, eternal perspective. Now you know the truth that 99% of Christians have never heard. The 24 elders are not distant and mystical figures from biblical history. They are representatives of all redeemed humanity, intercessors who present your prayers before God, and pioneers of an eternal reality where you too can govern alongside Christ. Every time you pray, one of the 24 elders is there, listening, understanding, presenting your petition before the throne of the Most High. Every tear you shed is collected in heavenly golden bowls. Every victory you win over sin and temptation is preparing you for an eternal throne. Every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every moment of faith amid difficulties. All of this is building your capacity to govern eternally. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine, at this very second, while you watch this video, one of the 24 elders, someone who was once human like you, who faced the same struggles you face, is interceding for you before the throne of God. Your prayers are not getting lost in the void. They are being carefully collected and presented by someone who perfectly understands your situation. Your life is not an accident. Your struggles are not without purpose. You are not being prepared just to go to heaven. You are being prepared to reign eternally alongside the Creator of the universe. Every challenge you face, every temptation you overcome, every moment of faith you demonstrate is adding authority to your future eternal throne. Maybe you've spent years feeling too small, too insignificant, too sinful to have a real purpose in God's kingdom. Maybe you look at your life and see only failures, limitations, lost opportunities. But now you know the truth. God is not just saving you. He is preparing you to govern. Every mistake you made and genuinely repented of, every weakness you acknowledged and surrendered to Christ, every moment of humility before God, all of this is shaping you to be a just and compassionate ruler in eternity. The 24 elders who govern today alongside Christ were once people like you. They faced doubts, fears, temptations. They made mistakes, failed, repented, got up again. And now they are there, not despite their humanity, but because of it. Because one day, when you are on your eternal throne, you will perfectly understand the struggles of other human beings who will need your intercession and leadership. If this revelation touched your heart, if you felt something move within your spirit while watching this video, it's because this message needed to reach you today. Maybe you're going through a difficult time in your life. Maybe you're questioning whether God really cares about you. Maybe you're feeling insignificant, forgotten, without purpose. But now you know there's much more hope than you imagined. Your prayers are being heard and personally presented before the throne of God. Your life has an eternal purpose that goes beyond your current understanding. You are being prepared for a position of authority that will last forever. Leave a comment below and tell me which of these 3 truths impacted you most. Have you ever felt that your prayers were being heard in heaven? How does this revelation change your perspective on your eternal purpose? And if this video changed something in you, if you feel you'll never see eternity the same way again, then share it with someone who also needs to know there's much more hope than they imagined. Subscribe to the channel, but only if you have the courage to discover more truths that can transform your faith forever. Because this is just the first of many revelations that need to be told. And if you made it to the end of this video, it's because God has something special prepared for you. Something that goes far beyond what you can imagine. Until the next revelation.